Man, I got our plan B. We're gonna catch Ghost tonight coming out that club. Ride by there and spray that motherfucker like it's 1992. I don't give a fuck who out there. Meet me in the house.
So this was Kanan who referenced spraying Ghost in a drive-by like it's 1992, and it does set up the timeline and current era we're currently in within Power Book 3. We not only saw a drive-by where Marvin and Lou sprayed the Italians, episode 10 was a full-on bloodbath. There was death across the board, from soldiers in the game to innocent parties who always end up being collateral damage. But then there were a few deaths which I thought were well deserved, and we could have made a case where they should have been killed sooner. For example, Worrell. But episode 10 was never gonna end without blood being shed on both sides, and an act of kindness from Marvin in a previous episode actually saved his life, but he is wounded badly. Raq also found herself staring down the barrel of death, and where one can argue an act of kindness worked in the favor of Marvin, Unique didn't have to help Raq, but he did, because this is Southside, and in Southside, they're one, and together they're gonna be a force to be reckoned with. But episode 10 really did paint a good picture of more than just being a bloodbath. It was an episode which gave us a clear indication, regardless of which life and path you choose, the street game is unforgiving, and there is no escaping. Whether you're Detective Burke in law enforcement, to Kenya who's a big churchgoer, and then there's Lou, and just like in season 1, we had an epic scene between him and Raq, who really does deserve an award based on her performance, not just in episode 10, but for embodying this role as a woman who lives in a man's world, but stands toe to toe with anyone who stands in her way. So with that being said, let's dissect this episode which gave us bodies. Now episode 10 picked up where episode 9 finished, and even though crackheads will always be crackheads, Sam gave us a reason to actually feel a little sympathy for him. Before Marvin gunned down Sam, he gave us his last and final smoke, but every crackhead has a story of how they got to where they are, and Sam was a former accountant who even had a CPA license, but that all went up in smoke, and here we are. But before Marvin put 2 bullets into Sam, he said sometimes you turn that corner and you can't go back again, and Marvin definitely has turned a corner, but in this game, being good will always get you killed in the street game, because as Andre Coleman once said, good guys finish last.
Type of thinks he's a good guy, but good guys finish last.
Now, with Sam's body being found later on by Detective Burke, unfortunately for Burke, Sam was dead before he could go on record about seeing Howard shoot her, and yet again, I'm not sure how many warnings Burke needs, but we had Howard telling Burke to leave this shit alone, but we all know Burke, so we are going to come back to her later on. Now, each of our characters were facing their own battles, so let's start with this meeting between Unique and Raq. They met at Lamont's diner, with Unique warning Raq the Bosellis and the Italians are coming for blood, but where Raq questioned Unique's intentions, we all know Unique is a stand-up guy, and the word snitch doesn't exist in Unique's vocabulary, so Raq wanted to bring Unique on board with her expansion, but Unique isn't built to be anyone's employee, he's a king. But this game sometimes does funny things, where friends become enemies and where enemies become friends, which is exactly what happened between Unique and Raq. I'm also not sure about you guys, but I definitely noticed a sparkle in Unique's eye, and one where he may have had an eye for Raq in the past, and who knows, maybe Raq did too, but they were always on opposing sides. So after this sit down with Unique, Raq, Marvin and Lou had this sit down where they said Neek only cares about Neek, but I do have to say, who isn't in this game for their own gain? So in this meeting, Raq said that this game is unpredictable, there's always going to be twists and turns, which really is the nature of this game, and you have to sleep with one eye open, but she wanted the Italians to feel them, and not only did she bring in some extra bodies to help, she'd already spoken to the godfather of NYC, Stefano Marchetti, and so this brings us on to the other side of the war with Sal Boselli. We saw Sal going to see Stefano, who's played by Tony Danza, and he said he wanted nothing to do with this war between him and Raq, but when this was all over, he needed to stay on his side of the river, and Stefano is a character who's described as the most powerful man in town, and is someone we're going to see more of in season 3. But this evening finished with the Thomases drawing first blood by this drive-by that took a handful of the Italians, and they really did catch the Italians cold, but we're going to come back round to the war, because there are a few more loose ends to tie up, because as this war was picking up pace, we saw Duke going out for revenge, and this is what Kanan once said in Power.
Who's got my boy, Kay?
One of the baddest motherfuckers we both know.
Tommy.
No, not Tommy. She run these streets harder than some of these men. Love pussy.
but ain't got no heart.
So unfortunately for Corey, he was on the other end of one of Duke's beatings, one which landed her in a holding cell and with her guardian angel, who of course was Detective Beck. And this is where Duke returned her favor from earlier in the season. Beck wanted proof that Howard was Kanan's father, but Duke ain't no snitch, but she did warn that Beck has got a target on her back, just like the rest of them. And we're gonna get back around to both Detective Beck as well as Jukebox later on. So as characters face their own complex issues, Lou opened up a surprising letter which showed more numbers in his Bulletproof Records bank account than he thought he had. But with Ziza showing she was an artist, they got to work. And the beat that Ziza made was actually a nod to Mary J. Blige, Real Love. But Lou followed this up with a meeting with the bank to get to the bottom of the bank balance, and the discovery that he made was that Rock purchased Crown's 15% share of Bulletproof Records, and let's just say, Lou wasn't exactly pleased. So just like at the end of season 1, we had this showdown between Lou and Rock in Rock's new house. But before Lou walked in, she read the card which said, "Wishing you and your family all the best as you make this house your new home. But just have a look around, it's big and it's empty and it really doesn't feel like much of a home, especially with what followed." Lou said he just came back from the bank and how Rock was all up in Lou's label, but Rock wasn't playing games. She said it's always been hers, and she did make that clear at the end of season 1. But this time, she went one step further in these war of words. She told Lou he doesn't own shit and how he was renting from her. She also said she bought him and sold him 100 times over, but Lou's always on his own shit. But Lou hit back because he was there last night. He also killed D-Wiz, and he was also there when they put down Scrappy. But this is where there was also another revelation. Rock admitted it was a mistake and Scrap wasn't the CI after all, it was his mom. And Lou's face said it all. And even though Rock was pretty harsh, one thing I did agree with was how Lou wasn't figuring out there is no escape in the game, because you're always gonna end up looking over your shoulder. But Rock left this conversation by telling Lou she owns him. And if we were gonna have a round 3 between Lou and Rock in season 3, it's gonna have to be quite feisty to beat this one. Now with Kanan and Famous, I made reference to how Kanan Stark is becoming his own man, and with him and Fame facing a dilemma together, Kanan said he's got some work because Rock's shit is his. And don't you think he sounds just like Rock? We have Rock telling Lou his shit is her shit, and we've got Kanan saying the same. So we saw him taking product from the projects, and even though he was questioned by Marvin, he couldn't stand in Kanan's way. So Kanan and Famous were back on the corners until he was scooped up by Burke, who ironically took him to Paisley Park, where he shot Howard. And maybe she was thinking, bringing Kanan back to the scene of the crime, maybe it would make him fold, but he didn't. Instead, Burke made the mistake of revealing Rock was a CI back in the day, something which Kanan wasn't aware of. But Burke, getting frustrated in not getting the information she wanted, she tried to arrest Kanan. But this time, Kanan pushed her back and ran, and he ran all the way to Howard's, who said they all needed to sit down to get their story straight. Now someone else who needed to get their shit straight was Rock, because Tremont got the better of her, going behind her back straight to Joaquin, and so he no longer needed Rock, which did lead Rock storming to Joaquin and Juliana. Now Tremont going behind Rock's back was foreshadowed in episode 7 when he sent Abraham inside to take a look at Rock's Colombian Connect, something which Juliana set up, which now makes a lot more sense after episode 10. This was Juliana's call, and she really does seem like she's grown in confidence sitting next to Joaquin, because when Joaquin said Rock is dangerous, she responded, "So am I." So this is a story that will definitely pick up in season 3. Now a lot of our characters had a real tough time these past 2 days, and you can't blame Marvin for just wanting to have a lie down, but in this game, you sleep with one eye open. But upstairs was only Jukebox, who moved back in, and Marvin showed this caring side more than once in episode 10, because he even showed it earlier when he asked Lou if he was okay. He also told Duke LT was given to a family that could take care of him in the way he couldn't. And we also saw him show some emotion after this conversation with Duke, because he does know in this game, you can go for a run, but one day you may never return, which is what almost happened for all 3 of the Thomases. With Lou having enough of Rock shit, he wanted to pack up and get the fuck out of Queens, but in come the Italians, who spray Bulletproof Records, with Ziza being caught in the crossfire, but Lou taking down both the Italians. Now more blood followed when the Italians hit Unique spot in Jersey, one which did end in the death of Borrell, but unleashed Unique. And while all this shit was going down, Sal Boselli was smoking his cigar, dancing to music. The Italians then came rushing through the projects, where we saw yet another act of kindness from Marvin. because he got his soldiers out from the back while he and Reddy covered them, but neither Reddy or Marvin were as lucky. Reddy died and Marvin was hit in the stomach, which is where I really did fear for Marvin, because while he was losing blood, the Italians were on his tail. But here's where a previous act of kindness from Marvin paid off, because Demo opened his door for Marvin, just like when Marvin opened the elevator door for Demo in episode 3. Now, you may have heard me say it earlier in the week, even though you sleep with one eye open, in this game, the one place you need to feel safe is your home. But Raq was always compromised because the Italians knew where she lived. And what made this scene even more impactful was the fact Kenya was collateral damage, and when she was able to knock on the door of Raq's house, that rang alarm bells because Raq has or did have bodyguards outside, but they were now dead, and soon they had a hell of a lot of gunfire being fired in their direction. And unfortunately for Kenya, she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But with nowhere to go for Raq, she was prepared to go down fighting, and she did take down one Italian, but got shot in the shoulder by Dario. But even though facing down the barrel of death, Raq didn't beg. She said, do what you came here to do. But fortunately for Raq, Unique had other ideas, because this is Southside, and he offered her his hand, which is something I'm going to go through in a lot more detail in my recap part 2. Now, outside came Kanan and Howard, and in season 3, Unique may learn a secret or two about Raq. Now elsewhere, we did see Juke telling James the truth about what really happened with Nicole, but with him being in complete denial, Juke had to drill it into his head Nicole got the drugs from her bag, not Beck, and so now you can say Juke and Beck are definitely even. We also saw Detective Garcia question the old man who opened the door after Famous killed Freddy, but he's an old head and he knows what happens if you snitch, but it is a fallout that may continue into season 3, just like Scrappy's mom. So with that being said, that's a breakdown of the season finale of Raising Kanan season 2, one which was a full-on bloodbath, but where they ended season 1 with Raq putting Unique in jail and having Kanan shoot Howard, this was one which brought Southside together. But there is going to be an even larger threat, Stefano Marchetti. So drop all your thoughts down below on all things episode 10 and look out for my recap part 2. And of course, if you are new to the channel and you haven't done so already, then remember to smash the subscribe button if you want to see everything Power Book 3 and Power Universe related. But as always, thank you guys for watching and I'll see you next time.